All right, Shabbos say good morning, a good tevach. All you have a beautiful and uplifting and meaningful Shabbos. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors. So thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Cheshvan. Just thank our Talmud of Month Cheshvan. Stephen Tarizin, in loving memory of Steve's father, Bunim Tzvi Ben Chaim, Leah Sol, as a schos refuah shlema for her daughter Ilana Bas Esther, and for all of those wounded in Eretz Yisrael. Yonasan and Rachel Wolf for a complete and lasting refuah for Rafal Yitzchak Baruch Ben Esther. Cherry and Sarah Walaski, schos of refuah shlema for their grandson Zechariah Dov Ben Perel Shira. Azriel and Iris Miller in the schos of the Holy Soldiers of the IDF, and in the merit of our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael. And of course, again, we as a shir have taken on to dedicate Maseches Baba Kamma in memory of Master Sergeant Elio Michal Charush, who was one of the first policemen killed in the fierce battle in the police station by Sderot. His actions, heroic actions, saved thousands. We hope then in the merit of our Talmud Torah, his neshama will have an aliyah, and in merit Hashem, his family in Chama. Well, so with that, let us begin. A very, very exciting daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Yud. We're actually going to pick up, even though, again, Rabbi Silber did a good job. He made some good pace yesterday. He got up to the top of Yud Amud Aleph. We're actually just going to backtrack a little bit, and because we should never be exactly on the right daf. It's always important. So let's start in the beginning of 9b at the Tana Rabbanon, so which is 2, 4, 6, 7 lines up from the bottom. So remember again, we introduced this really interesting brisa. So the Gemara says as follows: Tana Rabbanon, Chomer b'shar mi babar, Chomer bebar mi b'shar. There are certain stringencies that the halacha has in shar over bar, and certain stringencies in bar over shar. So again, remember, just to go ahead and define our terms. What is shar? So remember again, shar for our purposes, really according to almost all opinions, really covers 3 major forms of damage: keren, shane, and regel, right? Keren, an animal has intention to destroy. Shane, an animal goes out and causes destruction through some type of beneficial or hanadic activity, right? And regel, damage done during the course of activities of daily living. So we'll say, so that's when we say shar, that's what we mean. Bar, of course, is, we also spoke about bar can mean one of 2 things. Paradigmatic case of bar is, right? You dig a pit. That's a bar, right? Again, remember the tolda of bar would be, right, leaving something in Rishos Harabim that ultimately, again, could be a source of damage for other people. Good, so just we should define our terms. So now the Gemara says, there's a chomer that shar has over bar and a chomer that bar has over shar. So let's analyze this. Chomer b'shar mi babar. So we'll say, what's the chomer, what's the stringency, so to speak? Now, when we say stringency, what we mean is that there are certain concepts that apply to bar that don't apply to shar and vice versa. So chomer b'shar mi babar, shar mishalim es hakofer. If you have a shar that kills a person, we'll talk about this in depth, but you have a shar that kills a person, that goes and kills a person, there's a din of kofer. There's a compensatory payment that the owner of the shar has to go ahead and pay. The chayiv b'shloshim shel eved. Similarly, again, if a shar goes ahead and gores and kills an eved Kinani, there is an automatic penalty payment of 30 silver pieces. Nigmar dino. Similarly, again, once the shar is a muad and ultimately again has been condemned to die. That's nigmar dino. It's ultimately been condemned to die. Then what's the halacha? Aser ba'ana. The halacha is that the carcass itself is prohibited from any benefit. Take a look at Rashi. Aser ba'ana im hemis adam ki d'chsevu bala sharnaki ka adam shomer lechavero ploni yatzanaki min chasav ve'ein bahen hana. Good. So once ultimately the shar has been condemned, ultimately it is aser ba'ana. We'll talk about all these things in greater depth. The derech hazek, and the derech of a shar is to go out and damage. Masha'in kim babar. But I will say none of these aforementioned concepts apply to a bar. Fine. The chomer bebar mi b'shar. So we'll say, what is the chumrah that a bar has over shar? Shabar tchilas asiyas l'nezek. So first of all, a bar, in its very essence, is something created to damage. Right, that's what a bar is. Well, so remember again, let's take a step back. Paradigmatic is, where is a bar created? Where is a bar created? Rishos Harabim, right? So remember again, a bar, from its initial inception, is a damaging force. Is a damaging force. I just want to contrast that, as opposed to a shar, which has the inherent capacity to damage. The essence of a shar is not a damaging force. A bar in its essence is a damaging force. Okay, so as opposed to a shar, which the first couple of times it damages, ultimately again it's going to be a tam, and only after the third time does it become a muad. So ultimately again, which means, and by the way, that manifests itself in the payment of partial damages versus whole damages. So remember, a bar is not like that. A bar, so to speak, is muad. In other words, complete damages from the initial act of complete damages from the first time it's mazik. So, Mashen came b'shar. None of these things apply to a shar. Good, beautiful. Top of yud. Chomer b'shar mi ba'ish. I both say a price like this, by the way, is incredibly helpful. Incredibly helpful, also because it helps to kind of show us all the different aspects of each of these things. Really interesting. Top of yud. Chomer b'shar mi ba'ish. There's a chomer that shar has over ish. Chomer ba'ish mi b'shar. What's the chomer? Here we go. Chomer b'shar mi ba'ish. So the chomer that shar has over ish. Shashar mishalim kofer. Remember, if a shar kills a person, the owner pays kofer. V'chayi b'shloshim shal eved. We said before again that Allah chalamayiseh, if the shar kills an eved, there's a 30 silver piece penalty payment. V'nigmar dina aser ba'no. And like we said before, once the shar has been sentenced, so to speak, it becomes asra ba'ana. Masra lecheresh shota v'katan. Similarly, again, if I give over my shar to a chashu, right? Cheresh shota v'katan. Kam d'ram there between cheresh shota and katan. Cheresh deaf mute, shota someone who's deranged, katan a minor. They don't have das. Therefore, halacha l'maisa, if I give over my shar to a cheresh shota and katan, chayiv. I, the owner of the shar, am chayiv. But Allah will say, Eish, you're not chayiv for these things. And I will say, now this is actually very interesting. Now, what this means is, listen, there's a number of interesting things over here. First of all, the concept of if I give over an Eish to a cheresh, shota, and katan, I am not chayiv. In other words, I'm sorry, let me finish that sentence. I give over Eish to a cheresh, shota, and katan, and then the Eish does damage. Right? I am not chayiv for that, as opposed to if I give my shar over to a cheresh, shota, and katan, ultimately again I am chayiv. Why the difference? Because I remember again, we saw this in yesterday's daf. The ish by itself is not a damaging thing. Right? The ish by itself, if left alone, will extinguish. If anything subsequently happens, that's because of the cheresh, shota, and katan. That's different than a shar, where a shar is an inherent damaging force that, if not actively watched, will do damage. So therefore, again, when I am no longer watching it, by dint of the fact that I've given it over to a cheresh, shota, and katan, therefore I am liable for that. That's the distinction. The other piece Rabbi says is fascinating. There's liability if my shar kills someone, but I have no liability if my fire kills a person. Wild, right? Absolutely wild. What's the pshat with that? Take a look at top Rashi. Masha en keibesh. This is incredible. Eish lo chay basreif hasadam. This is incredible. If I have a fire in my property and I don't watch it and it spreads to my friend's property, and chas v'shalom, the fire ends up killing someone in, let's say, Ruvain's property, I, the owner of the fire, am not chayiv for that. Now again, remember, I'm chayiv if my fire damages Ruvain's property, but not chayiv if my fire kills someone. What's the pshat? Listen to this. So the Gemara says, shahaya lo livroach. Incredible. Why did I say? Because when a person sees a fire, what should he have done? Should have run away. In other words, should have run away. They will say, should have run away. Now, what happens if he was bound? Let's say Ruvain had someone in his house who was bound. Whatever, a long story, right? He had someone in the house who's bound. So let's say now the guy can't run away. The guy can't run around, or sick, by the way, or sleeping. Right? We're going to see other cases like this. So then on both sides, I'm still not chayiv. Why am I not chayiv? Kimli b'drabamine. Remember again, the kimli b'drabamine kid mefarish lekaman. So in that case, in achinami, it could very well be that halacha l'maisa there might be liability, but then there wouldn't be financial liability. We'll leave that case on the side. The point I was saying the Gemara is making over here is generally you're not chayiv if Aish kills someone. Why? Because a person ultimately again has das, and a person should run away. I will say, what an incredible and overwhelming Musar Haskell. I will say, Eish in life represents the koach hataiva, right? It's the power of desire. It's the power of chait. So I will say, so sometimes the Eish of taiva and the Eish of desire, the Eish of chait, it comes mamish like, it comes in with a fury, right? It's burning up, it's coming so close to me. So I say, you know what? What can I do? I was swept up by the Eish of Taiva. I was swept up by the Eish of Avera. What does the Gemara say? It's not a good defense. What should you have done? Say people think Rashi HaKadosh is just a commentary on Gemara. Rashi HaKadosh is also the greatest Musar Sefer. Rashi says it right here. What should you do when the Eish comes your way? Shahaya lo livroach. Run away. Run away. However fast the Eish of Taiva runs after you, here's the incredible part, I can run faster. I could run faster. If I do get swept up by the Eish of Taiva, just understand, it's not me. It happens to all of us, okay? So we own it, we move on, we do better next time. But Lamaisa, when that Eish of Taiva comes my way, which it always does, the Eish of Chait comes my way, Rashi HaKadosh gives us the secret to success. Livroach, Chaya lo livroach. However fast the Eish of Taiva is, I'm faster. Incredible. Incredible. And it's only Sunday. It's only Sunday. I'm already getting this. Incredible. And a little Rashi. Simar goes weiter. Mashen came be'esh. Chon be'esh b'mishar. So we'll say esh. Esh. We'll say, just one more word on that, by the way. The Hayilo Livrach, we'll say, also sometimes means that sometimes the best way to go ahead and control the Eish of Taiva is to change your circumstances. To change your circumstances, to literally reposition yourself somewhere. I will say, again, we all know this just from life, that often when I commit an Avera, there's certain, what's the right word? Certain circumstances that are in place that enable for that sin to occur. That's the way Chet works. So sometimes what real tshuva means is to be a barech, to run away from those circumstances. I'm not going to let myself be in that situation again. Whatever the situation is, livroach from those circumstances, right? Livroach from those triggers, so that therefore I'm able to go ahead and outrun the Eish of Taiva. Incredible. Someone goes right there. There's a chumrah that Eish has over Shar. Sha'eish mu'edes mitchilasa. Eish ultimately says, so Eish is muad from the beginning. But I will say, you begin to see that's actually true for everything but Karen, right? For everything but Karen. Okay, in any event, remember that Eish Mudu Tchila means for Eish, you have to pay full compensatory damages, even for a first-time offender. Right? Masha'en came b'shar, fine. Chumrah be'Eish mi b'bar. There's a chumrah that Eish has over bar. The chumrah b'bar mi ba'Eish, and a chumrah that bar has over Eish. Chumrah b'bar mi ba'Eish, the chumrah bar over Eish, shetchilas asiyasal nezek. So remember again, when it comes to a bar from its inception, ultimately is a damaging force. Masra l'cheiresh shotev v'katan, chayiv. Similarly again, we'll say, if I dig a bar, and I say to a cheiresh shotev v'katan, watch this. In other words, not watch me dig the bar, but guard this, right? Guard the bar, chayiv. Ultimately, again, I'm chayiv, masha'en came b'eish. So we'll say, same distinction, as you saw by Shar and Eish as well. Eish, it's interesting, because we don't intuitively think about it this way, but Eish, inherently, by itself, if left the way that it is not a damaging force. Because fire, ultimately, its derech is to go out, right? To extinguish. It's only if there's some other act which causes it to amplify. Masha'enkin bar, right? Bar, in its essence, is a damaging force that is not going to diminish. Chomer ba'Eish mi babar. There's a chomer that Eish has over bar. Sha'Eish darka leilech ulahazik. The Eish, the derech, ultimately again is to go out and damage. Right? Umu'ades le'echol. In other words, that means, in other words, that inherently it has the ability to damage. Umu'ades le'echol ben davar haroy la or ben davar shein haroy la. Now, this is interesting. Furthermore, Eish consumes that which is fit for it and that which is not fit for it. Now we'll see what that means in just a moment. Masha'en kein babar. Whereas that's not true by bar. Not true by bar. So the Gemara says, what does that mean? V'lisnei chomer b'shar mi babar. Why don't you list another chumrah? Shashar chayiv boas hakelib masha'en kein babar. We'll say, bless you. Say something else. Shar. We'll say shar. That halacha is if a shar damages utensils, there's liability for that. That's not true by bar. Right, by bar, ultimately, again, there's no liability. If somebody drops a utensil into my bar and it breaks in my bar, or someone accidentally kicks a utensil into a bar and it breaks, there's no liability for that. Tuish Nimar says, 1 second, Hamani Rabbi Huda. No, that's not true, that's Rabbi Huda. Temechayiv al niske kelim babar. So we'll say, no, it could very well be that we are following the view of Rabbi Huda, and Rabbi Huda holds that halacha l'maisa, there is liability for utensil damage in a bar. So that's a machlokes. Nimar says, 1 second, Rabbi Huda. If we're saying as Rabbi Huda, Ema Seifa, look at the end. Chomer, look at the brayso. Chomer ba'ish mi babar. There's a chomer that Aish has over bar. How so? Sha'aish darka leilech ula hazik. Umuad lecho bein davar hara'ila or bein davar shein ra'ila. So we'll say, so remember again, what did we say? That Aish has a chumrah over bar, that Aish, number one, goes out and damages, and number two, Aish is muad to go ahead and damage things that are fit for it, and even things that are not fit for it. So the Gemara says, Davar hara'ila mainihu. What's an example of something that is fit, so to speak, for fire? Eitzim. Wood. In other words, we'll say people commonly put wood into a fire. Davar she'ein ra'ila mainihu. What's an example of something that's not normally right for the fire? Kalim. I was about to say, here's interesting. Fire will burn kalim, but people don't normally put kalim into a fire to fuel a fire. Masha'in came babar, but this is different than bar. But 1 second, like we just said, Rabbi Yehuda. But if you're saying that we're reflecting the view of Rabbi Yehuda holds that you're liable even for kalim that break in a bar. Ha'amrit mechayev harahayi Rabbi Yehuda al niskei kalim babar. Right? Rabbi Yehuda holds that halacha l'maisa. One is chayev for utensil damage in a bit. Elali olam rabbanani. Rather, you're right. It's really the rabbanon. Vitana v'shir. So we'll say we're not listing everything. In other words, when we're going ahead and listing these chumras that one of the avos has over the other, it's not a full and exhaustive list. So therefore, for example, we left out kalim. We left out kalim. In other words, you could have included that shar there's liability for kalim, whereas bar there's not. Right? Or Aish, there's liability for kalim, whereas bar, there's not. But we don't list every single difference. So the Gemara says, but 1 second, what else was left out? My shear. So the Gemara says, the high shear tamun. So for example, we'll say another thing that was left out was tamun. We'll say, actually, we're going to talk about this. Very interesting idea. For Aish, one is only liable, ultimately, again, for destruction of items that are visible. But if something is hidden, obscured from you, and the ish destroys it, you're not chayiv. So just to give you a simple example of this, if I have a fire, Ruvain has a stack of wheat, right? And then what happens? Inside of that stack of wheat is a utensil, an earthenware utensil. Fire gets out of control in my property, goes into Ruvain's property, destroys his pile of wheat, and of course also destroys his utensil. I am chayiv for the wheat, not chayiv for the utensil. Why? Because the utensil is hidden. It's tama. Now, why that is or how that works or what it applies to, we'll see in Yirtzeh Hashem later on. The point I was just making is you see, but let's say, if you take a look at Rashi says over here, shir tamun, the havali lemisli chomer b'shar. But for example, let's say a shar, right? Let's say a shar, we'll say, damages a sack, and inside of the sack is a utensil. So the utensil is obscured from view, right? Yet the shar is going to be chayev. So you see from here, the point I was just making is we're not listing every single distinction. We're trying to give you an overview of the distinctions between the avos, but not every distinction is mentioned. Okay, interesting. Anybody say that possibilities? Rabbi Huda. Maybe not. Maybe in fact it reflects the view of Rabbi Huda, in which case again you're chayiv for niskei kelim even babar. The davar she'ein ra'ui la. So and when we say that for Aish, for fire, you're chayiv even if it destroys something that's not fit for it. Lav la'asuye kelim. It's not coming to include the case of utensils. Rather, what is it coming to include? Ela la'asuye lichka niro v'sichsecha avara. So we had this last week. It's coming to include the case of where my fire damages Ruvain's stones in his field, or singes his stones, or damages the earth, the field itself. So we'll say those are examples of, it's not classic damage because it's hard to quantify what's been done. But Allah said there would be some level of, but so that case is being excluded from this. Okay, fine. Where was right? Maskiv Rashi. Lisnei, so we'll say now Rav Ashi brings up the following shayla. Lisnei chomer b'shar babar. Why don't you bring up the following? That there's another chumrah that shar has over bar. How so? Shashar chayiv bo shar psuli hamukdashin masha'enkin babar. Shabbos says it's actually a very interesting case. Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Shar psuli hamukdashin. Rashi says sheniftev. Shabbos say here's the case. I have an animal that originally was pledged to the Beis Hamikdash, right? It was Hekdesh. And then what happens? The shar develops a mum. So it can no longer be offered up. So I redeem it. Even once that animal is redeemed, it still retains some level, some vestige of Kedusha. So that's the sharp look Rashi. Shenifta. So again, I have an animal that was set aside for sacrificial use, then redeemed, developed the mum, then redeemed. But it still retains some vestige of Kedusha. Rashi says, Shenifta v'nafal babar. Then I'll say what happens. Mamish, some animals have no mazel, right? Wanted to be a carbon, couldn't be a carbon, right? Got him home, right? Walking back to the house, falls into a bar. So now what happens? Halacha, I say, interestingly enough, the owner of the bar is potter. The owner of the bar is potter. Rashi says over here, Dichsev, Bal Habar Yishalim, V'hames Yihye Lo. Now we're actually going to talk about this on Amud Days. That halacha l'maisa, we'll see who gets to keep the carcass, right? When an animal falls into a bar and dies, so someone gets to keep the carcass because the carcass has value. So whoever gets to keep the carcass, we'll talk about in just a moment. But the point of Lo means you could use the carcass for whatever you want, even to feed it to your animals. Well, an animal that once belonged to Hekdesh, even though it was redeemed, cannot be fed to animals. Cannot be because of its vestige of kedusha. Rashi says, "Balabar sham ba'amis yalo yos zeh she'ein hameis shalo daf agav denifte emeis asher la'achilo leklavim." Right, a psulim mikdash, an animal that was hektish and was then redeemed, cannot be fed to the dogs. Fine. So let's go back to the Gemara. So Rav Ashi says, why don't we go ahead and include the following distinction? Right? So the Gemara says, Sharp So if my ox gores a disqualified sacrificial animal that's been redeemed, there is liability. But if that same animal falls into a bar, the Baal Habar does not have liability. So why not include that case as a distinction between Shar and Bar as well? That's a great case. To which the Gemara says, so if you say that the Braisa reflects the view of the Rabbanon, ID the Shayr Hach, Shayr Amihach. So as we just said before, the Rabbanon are leaving off other cases. For example, they left off Tamun. See, in other words, we're not going to make an all-exhaustive list of every single distinction, because there are many of them. The point of the Braisa is just to illustrate in some small way the distinctions between the Avos, understanding that there are definitely many things that are left. So the Gemara says, Eli Amrit Rabbi Yehuda, my shir, the high shir. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, what was left off? To which the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Dayish Beniro. Shabbos says, interesting case. The case of Rabbi Yehuda that could be left off, Rabbi says, is the following situation. If a shar goes ahead and does the following, let's say I have a plowed field. And I should say, Reuben has a plowed field, and my ox comes and tramples his plowed field. Now, what's interesting about this is as follows, which is, what's the destruction that's done in that case? What's the destruction that's done? Reuben has to replow the field, right? So in other words, my ox hasn't eaten anything, but a plowed field is ready to be planted. Now the ox tramples the field, he has to replow. That's a form of damage. So technically speaking, that applies to Shar, it doesn't apply to Bar. Why doesn't it apply to Bar? Because it just doesn't apply to Bar. Right? In other words, the Metzias of the case doesn't apply to Bar. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, that's left. So even according to Rabbi Yehuda, we see that it's not an all-exhaustive list. No, that's not a good example. The Gemara says, that's not true, because at the end of the day, the Braisa itself talked about the idea that the derech of Shar is to go ahead and cause damage. So again, included in that statement would be something like this, trampling on a plowed field. So therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, There's nothing really that was ultimately left out. Okay, so it remains a kash on the interpretation of Rabbi Yehuda. But the point is, beautiful brisa, right? Beautiful brisa, illustrating the interesting distinctions between each of the categories of avos. Good, let's go weiter. We'll say now a really interesting sugya. The Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says as follows, two dots. Hechsharti b'miktsas nisko. So remember again, yesterday in the Mishnah, we saw something interesting. What did we see? We saw a case where our principle, the Gemara said, that sometimes you only perform part of the damage, yet what? You are liable for all of the damage. In other words, I only play a partial role in the damaging activity, yet I am fully liable for the damage caused. So let's analyze that piece. Tanrabanan, hechsharti mixas nisko, right? I only played a partial role in the damaging activity. Chavti b'tashlumi nisko, but ultimately kehechshar kol nisko. But yet I'm liable as if what? As if I performed all of the damage. The Gemara says Ketzad. What's a good example of this? This is fascinating. So Ketzad, give me an example. Hachofer bar tisha. Watch this case. Let's say I dig a pit that's 9 tefachim deep. Uba achar v'shlimul asara, and Ruvain comes along and he digs the 10th tefach. Ha'acharon chayiv. Ultimately, Ruvain is chayiv. Why Rabbi say? Because again, we've seen this reference, though we haven't actually learned it, that a bar, in order for a bar to have liability, it has to be 10 tefachim deep. So in this case, if Rabbi say, I dug the first nine, and what? Ruvain came along and dug the 10th tefach. So what are we going to say? Now Ruvain is going to be the one who is liable, ultimately, again, if something happens in the bar. So the Gemara says, Udelo ki Rabbi, and not like Rabbi Kidisanya, Hachofer bar tisha uba achavishlim asara. If ultimately I dig a pit that's 9 tefachim deep, and then someone else comes along, Ruvain comes along and digs the 10th tefach, ha'acharon chayiv. The last one, right? Ruvain, because we'll say Ruvain is one with that last tefach who transformed this bar into a damaging force. Rabbi says, Achar acharon lemisa, achar shneim lenizakin. So this is actually very interesting. Rabbi makes an interesting distinction. Rabbi's distinction is, does something die in the bar or become injured in the bar? So I will say a bar of less than 10 tefachim is not capable of causing death to an animal. A bar of less than 10 tefachim is capable of causing damage. So Rabbi says everything depends on what happened in the bar. If the bar just damaged, or quote unquote just damaged, then there's liability for both me and Ruvain, because we both participated in digging of the bar. If the bar if the animal died as a result of falling into the bar, then really it's only on Ruvain, right? Because he dug that 10th tefach, not me. Rapapa Omer lemisa v'divrei akol. So Papa says, you're right, we're talking about a case where the animal died, and therefore everyone would agree about, in the case where the animal died, everyone agrees that what? That it's the second guy, Ruvain, who is chayiv. So I will say, so I'll just point out, this is a really incredible idea. See, here you have, I will say, I dug the first 9 tefachim. Yet again, halacha l'maisa, Ruvain comes along and digs the 10th tefach. Now, Shimon's animal comes along, falls in, and dies. Who's chayiv? Ruvain. But Ruvain only dug 1 tefach. You're right. But that's the example. I will say there are times where a person only participates minimally in the damaging activity, yet he assumes full liability. This is such an example. I will say, and this works according to everyone, because remember again, Rebbe normally holds, it depends. Does the animal get damaged? Does the animal die? If it's damage, it's dual liability. If it's death, it's singular liability for the last person who did it. So the Gemara says like this: Ikadami, others say, Lema de lo Rabbi. Maybe we'll say that the Brisa doesn't reflect the view of Rabbi. Amra Papa, Lemisa v'divrei akol. No. We're talking about a case ultimately where the animal died, and therefore everyone agrees that in that case, where I dug the first 9, Ruvain dug the last tefach, everyone agrees that liability is on Ruvain. Incredible. So the Gemara goes like, Demaskif Rabbi Zeira v'sulaka. They will say, now here's what's interesting about this. So we're looking for a case, right? The Mishnah espoused the principle. It's the principle of the Mishnah. Sometimes a person could only participate partially in the damaging activity, yet assume complete responsibility. So we're trying to find the case that illustrates that principle. So here you have one. Right? I dug the first 9 tefachim of the pit. Reuven dug the 10th tefach. Shimon's animal walks by, falls into the pit, and dies. Reuven is solely responsible, even though he dug 1/10 of the pit. He's solely responsible. I am scot-free on this. I'm scot-free on this. So now the Gemara says, aren't there other cases? Let me give you some other cases. Aren't there any other cases? Listen to this. Listen to this case. I give my ox to 5 people. And one of the 5 was negligent. I don't know, whatever. He went for lunch. Right? He left the shar, v'hizik, and the shar then went and damaged someone. Chayiv. Ultimately, the guy who abandoned his post, the individual who wasn't doing his job, ultimately he's going to be chayiv. Whereas, 1 second, what's the case? Ilema debalav ihu lo have a minter, so pshita diukava. So we'll say, if we're talking about a case where all 5 people were absolutely necessary to guard the shore, if that's the case, all 5 people were absolutely necessary, and one of the five left his post, and then the shore got out and damaged, of course he's liable. In other words, what's the shaila in that? Ella, listen to this. Debalav ihu nami minter. Rather, there must be a case of where what? You don't need 5 people to wash the shar. You don't need 5 people. It wasn't necessary to have all 5. So therefore what happens? And one of the 5 walked away. So if that's the case, Ella debalav ihu nami minter, my kavid. So excuse me, if all 5 people are not necessary to go ahead and leave the shar, guard the shar, and one of them in fact leaves his post, and then the shar got out and damaged, why should he be liable? You didn't need me. You didn't need me anyway. So what's going on over here? So the Rabbi say that can't be a good case, right? That case won't work. I'm sorry. That case won't work because mimanav shach. Again, if I'm needed and I abandon my post, then or I would say if the guy is needing to abandon his post, then of course he's liable. If he's not needed and he left and then the animal damaged, he wasn't needed anyway, so what did it matter? So the Gemara said, you're right. Let's find another case. What about the following case? Listen to this. Marba bechavila. So I will say, what about the case, ultimately again, of Marba bechavila? And I will say, Rashi and Amud Beis gives the definition of this case. This is a case, I will say, of where, halacha l'maisa, right, there's a fire, and I come along and I add in extra wood to the fire. I throw in some extra wood, right, So now I will say, so again, I go ahead and throw in extra wood, and as a result, halacha l'maisa, the fire kind of gets out of control and moves on and damages someone else's property. So what about the case of Marba bechavilos? So the Gemara says, Haychi dami. What's the case? Id b'lav ihu lo azla. So we'll say, if literally again the fire was just a nice little fire, right? The nice little fire that wouldn't have gone out and done any damage, and then I contribute extra wood, and as a result the fire gets out of control. So the Gemara says, pshita, that's obvious that I'm liable. Of course I'm going to be liable. Ella de belav ihu azla. Rather, we'll say you have to say, no, we're talking about a case where even without my intervention, the fire was getting out of control. So if that's the case, my kavit, then I haven't done anything. So we'll say that case is not going to work. We'll say, just listen, we're just looking for additional cases of where someone participates in a minimal fashion in the damaging activity, but assumes full responsibility. So that case is not going to work either. Maske for Rapapa, let's listen to this case. This is an interesting one. What about the following case? Here we go. Tisanya. 5 people are sitting on one bench. I will say we are in 10b, 4 lines down. 5 people sitting on one bench. Velo shavruhu, and the bench was just fine. Uba acher v'yashav alav v'shavro. And I will say, what happens? Another guy comes along. 6th guy comes along. Right? You know, you can relate this a little bit. Everybody's had like this elevator matzav, right? Packed in, someone else coming like, no, please don't do it, right? Just wait. Right? So 5 people sitting together on the bench and nothing happens. 6th guy comes along and sits down on it. V'shavro, boom, the bench breaks. So we say, what's the halacha? Ha'acharon chayiv. Guy number 6 is chayiv. So we'll say, v'amra papa. Papa says, Kigon, Papa Bar Abba. Now, both say this only assumes that guy number 6 is a guy like Papa Bar Abba. So, both say apparently in Talmudic circles, when you just said Papa Bar Abba, everyone knew what you were talking about, right? So Rashi says over here, Kigon Papa Bar Abba, Shahaya Bal Basar. Bal Basar. Rebbe was saying, some people are Bal Tshuva, right? And some people are Bal Taiva, right? And some people are Bal Basar, right? So again, the name, right? Again, big guy. So Papa, so it's interesting. So what's interesting over here is as follows. So watch what's happening over here. 5 guys sitting on a bench. Right? Nothing happens. 6th guy comes along, sits on the bench collapses. So therefore, again, what's going to be the halacha? Guy number 6 is chayiv. Now, it's interesting because the qualifier to that is, that's assuming that guy number 6 is a guy like Papa Bar Abba. Right? Papa Bar Abba. So I says, well, one second, let's back up here a little bit. Hey, Chidami, what's the case? Ilema, dibalav ihu lo idbar. So we'll say, if we want to say that, Lamaisa, even without guy number 6, the bench would have broken. In other words, we'll say, if at the end of the day, there was too much weight on the bench, right? And the bench was going to break, and guy number 6 didn't really do anything. It was going to break anyway. So ultimately, I'm sorry, I take that back. We'll say, so if we say, the bench could have supported 5 people, and it was guy number 6, the extra weight that broke the bench, then pshita, of course guy number 6 is going to be chayiv. Of course he's chayiv. Ela debalav ihu nami itbar. Rather, so what you have to say is like this. It must be the bench was going to break regardless. Already at 5 people, too much weight on the bench was going to break. So if that's the case, my kovid, right? My kovid. So we'll say, so what did guy number 6 do? In other words, if the bench was going to break regardless, then what did guy number 6 do? Sof mas nisa hechem v'tarsa. How do you understand the Mishnah? Because again, remember the Brisa did say that guy number 6 is liable. So how do you understand this? Lotzricha tibalav ihu havi mitbar b'trei shai. Listen to this. V'hashta itbar b'chad shah. We'll say here was the difference. With 5 guys on it, they would have broken. We'll say when would it have broken? 2 hours from now. Now, guy number 6 causes it to break right now. Now, we'll say now what's this? This is fascinating. The Amri lay. Ilav at haviyasvinan tvei porta v'kaiminan. So we'll say, listen to this. So we'll say, when the 5 guys are sitting there, what do the 5 guys know? Right? Anytime you have 5 guys sitting on a bench, one thing they know is this is an unsustainable situation, right? So, okay, we know we're going to have to get up. We have a little bit of time to get up. So, in other words, they have time to go ahead and prevent the collapse of the bench. Guy number 6 comes along and plops himself down. Boom, quite literally, right? Quite literally. Now again, instantaneous destruction. So that's what's happening over here. So we'll say, even though again, 5 was an unsustainable situation, but there was a window to remedy this situation. Guy number 6 comes along, and I will say, what happens? Suddenly, again, there's no time to remedy the situation. Therefore, he's going to be chayiv. We'll say, by the way, also just like an incredible metaphor. We'll say, often in life, we are like that situation of 5 guys sitting on a bench. How so? See, I will say, at any given moment in my life, there is something in a state of disrepair that is on the verge of collapse. That's generally the way that it works, right? Most of us have some type of situation like that. The good news is, I have like a window to remedy it. I will say, what's the challenge in life? The challenge in life is often Papa Bar Abba appears out of nowhere, right? Everyone has that Papa Bar Abba moment where, like, I thought I had some time to get this situation together, and boom, Papa Bar Abba sits down on my life bench, and everything collapses. Which is why I will say in life that when something is in a state of disrepair, don't wait. You might actually have time. In other words, well, it's like, not everything is acute. Sometimes in life there are situations that need to be remedied, but the house is not burning down. Like there's time to address it. It's true. There's time to address it as long as a Papa Bar Abba type of life circumstance doesn't come your way. But the moment that a Papa Bar Abba life circumstance come your way, suddenly now the bench is demolished. Suddenly again it's broken beyond repair. So in life, if I know that there is something that is on the verge of collapse, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a behavior that could cause my collapse, whatever it is, don't wait to remedy it. Even though you think you might have time, because all it takes is one moment of Papa Bar Abba type of circumstance that you did not expect to sit down on your life bench, and that entire window of that entire window to be able to rectify something, is totally obliterated. It's totally gone. If something is in a state of disrepair, find the koach to fix it and to fix it now. Incredible. So the Gemara says, V'lei malu. But why can't the sixth guy say to the group, Elav asun b'didi lo hava midbar? So again, why can't the sixth guy say, but one second, if you guys got up, in other words, if at the end of the day, not all five of you were sitting there, then my circumstance, then my sitting there wouldn't have made a difference. In other words, I will say, in this case, it's hard to pin everything on guy number 6. Because Lamaisa, again, it was the collective weight of the group. So why can't guy number 6 ultimately say to them, had one of you gotten up earlier, my sitting down wouldn't have made a difference? We're supposed to take a quick look at Rashi. Rashi is right across from Gilyon Hashas in the margin. V'leima lehu ilav asun b'didi, l'chud lo hava midbar, v'atem kishi yashafti, haya lachem la'amod. Now, obviously also the cases where guy number 6, Papa Bar Abba, and he sits down, the bench doesn't like it's instantaneously crack. In other words, there's a moment there. There's a moment there where anyone else had the ability to what? To get up. So why can't guy number 6 say to the guys, you guys, you saw me coming. Everyone saw Papa Bar Abba coming. You're like, oh, don't sit here, right? But everyone saw him coming. So why can't guy number 6 say, listen, when you saw me coming and you saw me about to sit down, one of the other you guys should have gotten up. In other words, he has the ability to say, you could have rectified the situation. To which we also listen to this. Lo tzricha de bahadi de samach lehu tavar. We'll say, this is great. What happened, I will say? Apparently, Papa Bar Abba didn't just sit down. It's almost like he leaned against them. I will say, if you could imagine, it could I don't know, the visual I have on this is like, he didn't sit on the bench. He laid himself down across them, right? So I'll say, so this is Papa Bar Abba really making himself comfortable. And I will say, now what's the pshat? By his sitting down, he prevented anyone else from getting up. So I'll say, so now in a situation like this, clearly the liability is going to be on Papa Bar Abba, right? On that guy number 6, right? And that's going to be liability. Why? Because I will say, again, it's interesting, I will say, it's interesting that you see from here, the Havamina is that if 5 guys are sitting on that bench, they know it's not sustainable. They see Papa Bar Abba walking over. It could very well be that when Papa Bar Abba sits down and the bench breaks, that there could be shared liability because the taina of I'm using Papa Bar Abba, the taina is you knew the bench was going to break. Any one of you other 5 guys could have gotten up also. You didn't. Maybe there's going to be shared liability. What's interesting, which is also interesting, that you see that in moments of shared liability, everyone has an obligation to go ahead and diffuse. As I say, we see this all the time, like in Inter, right? Ever have a situation where someone is just being very difficult? And I don't know, maybe it's happened to you, right? Right? In a conversation or in a relationship of someone who is an agitator, right? It happens. So people think that in conversations with agitators, so you meet them where they are. It's not always true. First of all, often you're not going. When somebody's interested in just being provocative, lav dafki you're going to be able to win anything or get anywhere. Let's say sometimes the avoda in life is in difficult situations to diffuse, which is interesting because here, again, when those 5 guys are sitting on the bench and they see Papa Bar Abba, they can be like, I'm not moving. If it breaks, it's going to be because of him. Maybe not. Maybe the best idea is just to move so that the bench doesn't break. In other words, but why should I? It's Papa Bar Abba's fault. He's the one who's coming over here. Maybe you're right. I would say, but life is not really about being right. Life is not being on the floor as a result of a broken bench, right? That's a much better thing in life. Sometimes it's just better to get up and move away and diffuse than it is ultimately, again, to get caught up in the fray. Interesting. In any event, the Gemara says as follows. So therefore, the case that we're talking about is where Papa Bar Abba, guy number 6, leaned against them and essentially prevented anyone from getting up. So the Gemara says, so pshita, that's obvious. So if he's preventing anyone from getting up, then of course he's going to be liable. So Ma'atem, what would you have thought? Kocho lav ke gufo dami. And I must say it's interesting. If you can imagine if Papa Bar Abba is leaning against them and not sitting on the bench himself, perhaps I will say, that's not called gufo. So he's not sitting on the bench. It's not his guf. So maybe there's not liability if it's not gufo. It's only kocho. It's only his strength. So I might have thought that maybe kocho is not kigufo. Kamma shmulan di kocho kigufo dummy. So we'll say incredible. So now halacha might we say your koach, right? Your, so to speak, your koach is just like your guf. In other words, there's no difference between sitting on a bench versus leaning against people who are sitting on a bench, right? Even though one is your koach and one is your guf, they're treated the same thing. So the gufo tavar kocho nami tavar. Any situation ultimately again where the body would cause breakage. If the guf does the same, if the guf would cause breakage and koach does the same thing, koach is the same thing as guf. Incredible. For sulaka. So we'll say we're still looking. Remember, we're still looking for additional cases of where there is only partial participation in the damaging act, but complete liability. V'sulaka v'ha'ika hadisanya hika asar b'nei adam be'eser maklos. Listen to this. So we'll say if 10 people hit a person with 10 staff. So we'll see if 10 people hitting Ruvain with their sticks. Whether they're doing it at once or they're doing it one after consecutively. Umeis and Ruvain chas shalom dies. What's the halacha? Kulan pturin. They're all pater. They're all pater. And I will say, now why are they all pater? Because again, it's hard to know exactly who went ahead and delivered the death blow. So there was Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira Omer, no. Bezeh acharon chayiv, mipnei shekirev es misaso be'es misaso. And I will say, so Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira says, that's not true. That's not true. If they all hit him at the same time, then enachinami they're exempt. Why? Because we don't know who caused the death of Ruvain, right? But I will say, but lamaisa, if they did it zeh consecutively, then the last guy is going to be chayiv, right? Why is the last guy chayiv? Ultimately, because we'll say one thing is clear: we look at him as delivering the death blow, or if he himself didn't deliver the death blow, he definitely hastened the death of Reuven, and therefore again he will be liable. So the Gemara says, "Sabose." Here you see another case of partial participation in a damaging act, but yet complete liability. To which the Gemara answers, "Biktala lo kamari." No. You're right. We're not talking about cases concerning death. Fine. The Ibay said other possibilities, but plukta lo kamairi. We're not talking about cases of machlokes. The Gemara says, really? Velo v'ok minan delo karebi. But I was saying Amadal, if we just said that Allah chafal d'Rabbanan, not Rebbe, that was a machlokes case. Delo karebi karabanan mukminan. But so we're totally comfortable saying that in the previous case, the halacha doesn't follow Rebbe and it follows Rabbanan. Why? Because Rabbi say that's a simple formula. That's yachid v'rabim halacha kirabim. Anything a machlokes between an individual and a collective, the halacha always follows the collective. So that we're comfortable with. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira lo karabanan lo mukmina. We'll say, but again, Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira and the Rabbanan, that we're not as comfortable as wading into. Okay, good. Let's go a little bit weiter, then we'll stop. Chavti b'tashlume nisko. So I will say. So remember again, in this case, the way the Mishnah read, was as follows. Right. Kol shechavti b'shmira. So what's the quote over here? I'm sorry. Chavti b'tashlume nisko. Yeah, so I'll say, so remember, we just, Hechsharti b'miktsas nisko, Chavti b'tashlume nisko. So remember again, it's all the same phrase. If even though I only partially participated in damages, even though I only partially participated in the damaging act, Chavti b'tashlume nisko. I become completely liable for the damages. Now, what the Gemara is picking up on over here is something very interesting. Chavti b'nisko lo katani, ela b'tashlume nisko. So the Gemara is just pointing out an interesting verbiage or interesting wording over here. The Mishnah doesn't say Chavti b'nisko, which would mean I am chayiv in damages, but rather what does it say? Chavti b'tashlume nisko. I am chayiv ultimately again. I will say, now here's what's interesting. We normally go ahead and translate tashlumin as what? As payment. The truth is, tashlumin means payment, but shalem means whole. I'm only chayiv to go ahead and pay the rest of the damages to make the injured party whole. Okay, so what is this saying? This is incredible. So Tanina Lahu the Tanabana say, why is this important? So we'll say what this sounds like over here is as follows: that if I damage someone, I'm chayiv in tashlume nisko. So I'm chayiv ultimately again to pay the rest of the damages to make them whole. What does this refer to? Excuse me. So Tanina Lahu the Tanabana, tashlume nezek. We'll say when we speak about tashlume nezek, in general, damages are not just called nezek, they're called tashlumin. So we often translate tashlumin nezek as payment of damages. The Gemara says that's not what it means. Tashlumin means to make something shalem means I have to pay whatever else I need to in order to make the injured party whole. Now, what does this mean? I will say, watch this. Melamed, second wide line. Melamed shabaylim metaplim binavela. This is incredible. Now, I will say, listen to this case over here. Listen to this case. I'm sorry. Listen to this case. My ox kills Ruvain's ox, right? My ox scores Ruvain's ox. So obviously, we'll say, what's the halacha? What's the halacha? I'm chayiv. All right, leaving aside tam muad, I'm chayiv. I'm chayiv. Now, we'll say, what am I chayiv for? What am I chayiv for? In general, when you damage, what are you chayiv for? Replacement. So I will say, now understand, there is an asset here. What's the asset? The carcass. Right, the carcass, right, the dead ox, right, Ruvain's dead ox, right, Allah Shalom, right, or as in Baltimore, Allah Shalom, right, as they say in Baltimore, right. Hey, so I'll say, so Lamaisa again, so Lamaisa, now there's the carcass, So I'll say, so the shaila is, so there's a carcass, that carcass has to be sold, or that carcass can be sold, and then there's a realizable, not profit, but realizable money. Who is chayiv to take care of the sale of the carcass to realize some amount of money from that? Because remember, so now what's interesting is as follows. I, the damager, am chayiv to pay Ruvain. Ultimately, I'm chayiv to replace his ox, right? But remember, let's say an ox is $1,000. A carcass is worth something also. So who's chayiv to deal with the sale of the ox and the proceeds from the ox? So the Gemara says something amazing. So the Gemara says, Bailim means who? The damaged party. The damaged party, right? The Bailim is obligated to take it. So we'll say, so now what it sounds like the Gemara is saying is like this. When I injure right, my ox injured Ruvain's ox, now Ruvain has a dead ox. We say, Ruvain, okay, listen, I'm good, I own it, I'm going to pay, but here's what we're going to do. You take care of the sale of your ox. See how much you get for the sale of your ox. Let's say Ruvain gets $200. Now what's the halacha? I owe Ruvain another $800. That's the halacha. And now I've made him whole, so he's realized some money from the sale of his ox carcass. I make him whole ultimately again from the rest of the money. Look at Rashi just a moment. We'll say third Y line. Rashi says, "Habaylim etaplim benavela kilomar notlin es hanavela." So the owner ultimately, again, the owner goes out and takes the navela. He goes out and he sells it off. Whatever profit ultimately again is realized from that is great, and then I am obligated to go ahead and make him whole for the rest. Right? Well, let's read one more. Where do we know this from? Rabbi Ami Amar Kra Makib. Actually, you know what? We'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up Amir Hashem with the rest of this. Again, it actually goes all psukim. We'll pick up with the rest of this tomorrow. We'll say so again. We've espoused the principle. Now tomorrow, Amir Hashem will discuss what the source for that principle is. You'll say, Shkoyach. Tremendous. All right, Chavran Zoom, have a great day, everyone.